Hello, I'm John. Welcome back to Dr. Hollowed. Today we're taking a look at the scariest camping stories. Please be sure to like and subscribe.
My family, mom, stepdad, brother, another family of 3 and my friend went camping by a lake. We rented 2 cabins, one was across the lake. The first cabin could hold 5 people max in one bedroom, and a bathroom that's door was outside the original bedroom. The second cabin had 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a living room and a garage, so basically a small house. My mom decided last minute that me and my friend, I'll call Brooke, would stay in cabin 1 while they and the other family would be in cabin 2. I was fine with it, so was my friend. We were middle schoolers who got to stay up, sounds fun. Now my mom and everyone else leaves to cabin 2 and me and Brooke talk about dumb shit from our schools and Brooke has to pee. As I said before, the bathroom is outside, so we start to head out. As a joke, I bring my pocket knife and say just in case we leave the bathroom and we see a light, kinda like one of those big flashlights, coming from the trees by the lake, which is weird because the owner's house is the opposite way and no one else is with us. We got scared, went inside, locked the door and slept in the same bed. I went to sleep and woke up later at probably 3 to 4 a.m. from Brooke shaking me. It took a second to register in my head, but someone was knocking at the door. I told Brooke to look out the window while I texted my mom to see if it was someone we came on the trip with. My mom was asleep and Brooke couldn't see anything because it was so dark. We waited till 6:30 and then I passed out. An hour later everyone else came to wake us up and we asked if anyone came to our cabin last night. They all said no and we stayed there another day. Nothing happened. When we were leaving we asked the owner about it and he said he wasn't even on the property that night. I still don't know what happened. I go camping fairly frequently and I still haven't told my friends about this one yet because I'm not sure I believe it myself. So I was camping with friends in a pretty secluded spot in the northern part of Lake Powell, Utah. We had been drinking but more to make sleeping easier. Anyway, we all called it a night and went to our tents. The stars were awesome and it was pretty warm, so I was sleeping without my rain fly on. I was just starting to get comfortable under the stars when I saw something I hadn't seen before. It looked like a normal sized star with 2 smaller, but distinctly separate round stars/objects to the left and right of it. When I noticed it, I swear I looked at it every way I could. I squinted, I looked away and back, but I was just truly seeing this strange object/group of stars. And almost as soon as I confirmed that I wasn't hallucinating, the 2 smaller objects both quickly separated in opposite directions from the main star until I lost track of them. I don't know what I saw, but I had some deep thoughts that night about who/what is watching us. Scariest in Denali National Park. I was with my brother. We had just finished a trek around the base of a mountain. There are only front country trails in Denali, so it was all awesome bushwhacking in grizzly country. We'd already seen 7 grizzles, a wolf, many moose, etc. We were exhausted, laying on the gravel along the dirt road waiting for the NPS bus to pick us up. I stood up to go pee near the road and I hear some noises in the brush nearby, and my brother yells, "There's a grizzly, get over here." There wasn't. He was fucking with me and had been tossing pebbles into the shrubs. I walked back and laid down. He got up and was poking around. About 10 minutes later he comes running back to be saying there's a big grizzly walking towards the road from the shrubbery I was peeing in earlier. I absolutely didn't believe him at first until I saw his face and could tell he was serious. I grew up in black bear country, I'm a biologist, and I'm also very familiar with bear safety. But I was on extra edge because we had a very scary experience the day before with a grizzly bear cub following us. Anyway, this big grizzly bear popped out of the woods about 300 feet down the dirt road from us. It starts crossing the road, then pauses, sniffing the air. It turns towards us and starts sauntering directly towards us up the road. Obviously this is the opposite behavior of what you want. We grabbed our bags and put them on, got right next to each other waving our arms and shouting. During this I was taking photos with my DSLR. But decided I needed to put it down and focus on scaring this thing off. While shouting we threw many baseball-sized round glacial till rocks at it, some bounced up and hit its legs. It kept coming, so we each had our bear spray in our hands with our arms extended out, waiting for it to get to about 30 feet. In that moment I felt completely helpless. I remember thinking that this must be what our ancient ancestors felt like with spears and rocks fending off large predators. It was truly terrifying. I am aware of all the bear behavior research and have read bear behavior books, but in that moment I wanted a firearm along with the bear spray. Because I was also aware of many instances where a grizzly shrugged off bear spray and just went for it. Thankfully at about 50 feet the bear grunted, and turned around and went down the road and down the steep hill adjacent to us. We watched it from the hill as it dug up the ground while walking through the braided river system and not stopping, eating what it found below the soil. Another, far less, scary moment in a very different ecosystem. In the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, I awoke at 1 a.m. to a bull alligator bellowing immediately below the wooden deck I was sleeping on. Maybe 12 inches from my body, with the deck, thankfully, between us. Then dozens of others around us began doing the same. My brother, friend, and were all spooked into silence for a minute before we all agreed that was scary, haha. This was our third trip there, but first time experiencing that. Not my experience, but something I did when I was in high school. I used to bushwhack and sleep in random places in the White Mountain National Forest with my brother and some friends. Some nights we would scare night hikers and start doing our best coyote howl in the woods, about 100 feet from the trail. We'd see their headlamps start bobbing down the trail as they started to run. I feel a little bad about it now. Still can't figure out why this struck me so creepy when it happened, but ah well. I do quite a bit of solo backpacking in the backcountry of Colorado. It is the only way I can actually reduce my stress, normally, and if I go with someone, I never get to enjoy it fully. I take bear spray, and a firearm for protection against any sort of creatures that may be an issue. Anyway, on this particular trip I had set up camp at around 11,000 feet and knew there was no chance anyone was near me. I hadn't seen or heard a soul all day long. It was awesome. Side note that isn't creepy, on this same night I had the best experience by seeing Saturn and a few of its moons with just my binoculars. Anyway, sometimes I'll download a movie or something to watch on my phone. I know, judge me all I want for still using technology, but it's what makes me happy at certain times. For this trip I had downloaded Wind River without knowing what it was about. So if you've seen the movie, you know it gets pretty intense. There's some backwoods tomfoolery going on and it gets pretty rough in the movie. 2 a.m. or so comes along and I am awoken by lots of gunshots. Not fireworks, gunshots. They feel close, but in the mountains, sound can travel really far, and in funky ways, so I decide that I'll stay calm and try to get back to sleep because it's not like I'm in cell phone range to call 911, it was probably on private property, and over the past 24 hours I had not heard or seen a single person. 2:15 am hits and I hear footsteps and talking. Not shouting from a valley below, but from above me. They were maybe 50 yards away from me and up the hill a bit, and they weren't talking aggressively, joyfully, fearfully, anything that some pissed off and lost hikers would sound like at 2:15 am. They were almost mumbling/whispering to each other, but super calm. Couldn't tell how many, but my firearm was ready to go. I heard some twigs snap around the same level, but 40 to 50 away probably still, and then I never heard another sound. In my head, they had stopped moving. They had seen my tent. They were staring at it and just watching. About an hour goes by of me sitting there, tense as hell, wondering what is happening outside of my tent and listening for any sound I possibly could, in hopes that I would hear them move along. I never did. Morning hit and I was exhausted. I decided to actually crawl out and see if I could tell if another camp had been set up, trace of people, or hell, if they were actually creepy as hell and just sitting there watching my tent ready to murder/eat me or whatever. All was good. I packed up and hiked back to my car. Went back to the same area, not same spot, about 3 weeks later feeling totally fine, but the moment I got to a campsite and set things up, I freaked out remembering that night and just packed back up and turned around. That was really rambly, but it was fun to relive and type out. I worked as a summer camp counselor in the mountains of Colorado in 2017. It was a beautiful site surrounded by trees and with a layout that had the cabins in a string clustered on one side of the camp away from the dining hall, green areas, etc. Every day after the kids were put to bed around 9 to 10 p.m., counselors could take turns going to the staff room to do nightly routines before returning back to the cabins to go to bed. I was a junior counselor, yet, I received the same responsibilities in addition to dish duty after every meal, and so by the time the two group leaders had finished up it was around 11 to 12. I set out in the night with my toiletries and walked out along the dimly moonlit dirt path towards the staff room and the bottom floor of the dining hall. I finished my routine relatively quickly because I was tired after an entire day of working with children and scrubbing dishes. It's important to mention that I do have a small flashlight with me, but I never used it because shining into the woods you would often see glowing eyes of deer and other critters that I did not really care to see. The cabin I was working in was with the youngest kids, aged 7 to 8 years old, and it was situated on the farthest side of camp. I was walking up the final stairs to the cabin, flashlight off but in hand, when I hear what sounded like rustling or moving of brush in one quick sweep. Instinctively, I turn on my flashlight to see the largest wild animal I have ever seen at that point in my life. and we saw adolescent bears roaming camp several times throughout the summer. What I would estimate was 4 to 5 feet long, without including the length of its tail, was a mountain lion staring right at me. I was frozen and in complete shock. I didn't know whether to run the shortest distance to the cabin or stay silent, and this sensation went on for what felt like a minute or two. I never moved from that spot until I got spooked yet again by the counselor of the cabin in the section across from mine. That sound of them coming up behind me must have scared the mountain lion the same way, as when I returned the light to the same spot it was gone. A few days later, a severed deer leg was found in the woods approximately 100 feet from our cabin. And before I left the camp, I found out the area in which we were was one of the most highly concentrated locations for mountain lions in the United States, never fact-checked so that could be wrong. Nonetheless, it was a terrifying but amazing experience. Not mine but a friend's. 2021 rural Virginia in the mountains. Friend, let's call James, was meeting his other friends near a creek surrounded by woods and mountains. James gets there early as the sun is setting. He makes camp and rests for a bit, and when the sun is gone he hears rustling in the woods across the river. Thinks it's just a deer for the first few minutes, but slowly he realizes it's making a pattern of movement, as in it's going back and forth between places numerous times. Not just some animal wandering. He grabs his knife but hears his friend's big-ass truck coming down the slope. They greet each other. Michael, new friend, I had a concerning look about it. If I remember right. James, what's going on? Michael, that was real funny, asshole. James, what? Michael, I heard you following behind me. When I was walking down the slope. I heard something following me in the woods. So James tells him about the thing pacing, and they think it may just be a crackhead, cause this regions was notorious for them. They eventually just start talking about random shit, forgetting the rustling, but they eventually say something along the lines of, "Where's Liam, their final friend, coming?" Half an hour later, Liam, final friend, shows up with pizzas and is running towards their location at full blast. He gets to them and James asks him, "Why are you running so fast?" Lima tells them that he heard something rustling in the woods behind him. They said the same thing that happened to them, but Liam then says, "Okay, if it's a crackhead that's fine, but how did it know my name?" Liam says that something in the trees kept whispering his name, and the pacing got faster as Liam sped up away from it. So eventually they settled in, and around midnight hear a loud thump in the water, like something dive into it near their camp. They nope the hell out of there, and when they get back to their trucks to head off, they hear the woods growing alive with birds screaming, winds and wolves howling as something is following them. They heard the pacing again. James tells me he heard it whisper his name. James thinks it was a skinwalker. Woke up to my buddy and his girlfriend talking to someone. I was asleep in a hammock out of view of the fire. I was listening to their convo when the guy started making weird statements. I specifically remember, "So how does someone as pretty as you end up with a beta like this? Haha, I'm just kidding, and could I get your number in case you break up with him?" I came to realize I had no idea who the fuck this guy was, where he came from, and that their body language and subtle statements were telling him to go away. I crept out of my hammock, went around in the dark, and just like in the movies, let the slide of my .45 drop with a loud clink. Forgive me, but I asked him if a rape victim squeals in the woods, and he just looked at me surprised, like he didn't know what I meant or where I came from. A few seconds later I think he got what I was implying, and he just stood straight up, said "I'm sorry," and started walking down the dirt road. I was pretty scared at this point because I've never pulled a gun before on anyone, but decided to dump the magazine into the air. We decided to pack up and leave just in case he came back with friends. It was only about 10 p.m. Ironically, my buddy's girlfriend was pissed that I was implying I was going to rape someone. I don't think she understood the potential danger we were in. I'm 5'11", 190 pounds, and go to the gym 5 times a week. This guy would have dropped me on my head in a heartbeat. Went traveling in 2003, Thailand, Oz, NZ, islands etc., and we were camping in the Blue Mountains in Oz. No one at the site apart from this really odd guy who said he was British but wasn't allowed back into the UK for some reason. He was selling necklaces and other stuff. There was a waterfall down in the valley that we said we were going to walk to later, but he was adamant that this was miles away, would take hours, and we shouldn't bother. We went anyway, and it took us 15 to 20 minutes walk to get to. Loads of things really didn't add up about him. He mentioned something about royalty and a jilted ex-girlfriend, but I can't quite remember the details. I do remember when me and my wife were in our little 2-man tent and the moon was high and bright, we saw him about 2 a.m. standing near our tent. Shadows felt like he was on top of it, and he looked like he was holding a large stick or something. He was just standing there stuck in hand for ages. Didn't sleep a wink and got up just before sunrise, packed up and got the hell out of there. To this day I honestly think we could have been a newspaper headline. When I was 16, I used to spend most summers at my best friend's house as things weren't great at home. She lived out in the countryside on a farm and her parents were pretty relaxed, a bit too much looking back. My friend had an older boyfriend and her parents wouldn't let him stay over, so quite often we would go camping together so she could invite him along. We stopped at the shop one night to get some alcohol. Her boyfriend was 18, so he went in and we waited outside. A group of lads approached us and as one of them went in, we were chatting to the others and my friend mentioned we were going to be camping at X place. I thought that was a bad idea as I got a creepy feeling from the way a few were standing too close, but she knew a couple of them so thought it was fine. We set up sleeping bags and my friend and her boyfriend got super drunk and after dinner, pretty much passed out. Not before I had to hear them having sex though, which was a bit awkward. I didn't drink much as I'm a lightweight and also have awful insomnia, so was still awake hours later. I could hear something out there, snapping twigs and stuff, but assumed it was an animal as there were always foxes trying to get to the hens etc. But when I went out to pee I saw a torch somewhere nearby and realized it was a person. Then I saw more torches coming down the hill. The noises got louder once I got back and I could hear voices at a couple of points as I guess they got really near. I woke my friend who was drunk still and useless and her boyfriend was out of it and we couldn't move him. I'm 6'2" but couldn't bench a Pop-Tart and my friend was a foot smaller and had put away so much white lightning that she should have been dead. Think cheapest cider you can buy. We had camped in this place loads of times before and no one had ever come near us as it was private land. Friend knew the owner who was fine with us camping. I just had a gut feeling that the people out there weren't up to anything good as I kept hearing someone loudly shing the others. Anyway, bit anticlimactic, but they didn't find us as we camped down a bit under this overhang, not visible from the top of the hill and didn't have a fire or anything because effort. A few weeks later we bumped into the lad my friend knew and he asked if we had gone camping. When we said we had, he laughed and said they had got drunk and looked for us for ages to party. Even my friend got weird vibes from that interaction and we decided not to camp there again. We had another interaction with the same group a few months later which I will mention in case anyone is interested. We were walking back from her boyfriend's house in the middle of the night, as we usually did every Saturday after sneaking out. Parts of the route were a road between two huge fields and we heard a car coming, which was unusual at 2 a.m. We went off the road into the field, mainly because we didn't want to get hit. Had to go one side as there was a bull in the other field. The car stopped and we saw same group of boys get out and shine torches across the fields. We had ducked down by then. They did this for ages before driving off. Don't know what they were looking for that time, but again, didn't give off good vibes. Now I wish we had reported them, but friend didn't want her parents to know we were sneaking out and camping with her boyfriend. I watch a lot of true crime and I cringe now at the risks we took and the fact no one knew where we were during any of this. It was before mobile phones were widespread too and there was only one spider-infested phone box in the whole village. My 3 friends thought it would be fun we do survival camping as practice before shipping out for Marine Corps boot camp. They all joked saying I was the civilian cause I was the only one who chose to not to join the Marines in our group and didn't wear camo or a 70 pounds pack. So basically everyone carried what they needed to survive for a week in the wilderness. I carried a day pack, with bare essentials. Them calling me a noob was the best part. Lol. I was trained in survival for years, though. My other friends not so much, and were overconfident when I questioned their loadout on the trip. So we hiked off trail into the woods for I'd say a good 8 miles. We decided to hunker down. Nighttime was pitch black cause the thick trees blocked out all light. I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face, you can only hear sounds. Shining a light only disappeared into darkness with maybe 1 meter visibility in the thicket. Didn't help the mother of all thunderstorms was coming in too, but we didn't realize until it was on top of us and the winds were whipping the trees around at 50+ miles per hour. Rain just drenched everything in the dead of night. No one had brought anything for shelter, no tents, they wanted to sleep on the ground. Except me with a tarp, a length of rope, and a hammock. Halfway through the night 2 of my friends refused to get under the tarp out of sheer stubbornness. One had enough of being sopping wet and cold and crawled under my makeshift tarp shelter. Flashes of lightning was ripping through the skies. I'm generally not scared of the dark, but laying there looking up in the dark was a bit unsettling. Shadows of trees looked surreal at times and every sound brought in some paranoia that it's a mountain lion or bear lurking around cause we had food. My friend who had decided to crawl under the tarp was with me when we woke up in the early morning. With no word to us, the other 2 had disappeared in the middle of the night in God knows what direction. We didn't know if they got lost or hurt or what happened to them at all. My friend and I stood there for an hour wondering if we left the area now they might never be able to trace back to us. Finally, after some talking and frustration, I decided to try to navigate our way back to some marked trails or roads we previously saw somewhere. Basically had to do everything by memory and just started walking. After hours of tracking for signs of the other two, like muddy footprints, broken twigs and branches calling out, we finally found them wandering the woods. We ended on a service road hours later and eventually back to the car. I wanted to yell the crap out of them for doing something that's stupid, but I can see everyone was miserable already and they had a mouth full of humble pie from the night before. So don't underestimate the civilian.